I'm Nolan, 32, and the responsible one in the family, which is code for the one who gets walked all over until he doesn't. I've always been the one people call when their car won't start, when they need help moving, when someone's late on rent, just this once. The one who's expected to step up without being asked. And for a long time, I did. I stepped up. I swallowed the small slights. I lent the money and never chased it. I smiled through the backhanded comments, the unfair expectations, and the quiet assumption that I had less need for kindness because I had more discipline. But what happened this Christmas finally pushed me past that silent line I didn't even know I had drawn. Hosting Christmas was something I volunteered for this year. My house is the biggest since I bought it last spring, and despite some hesitation, I thought, why not? I cooked. I decorated. I even set up a cocoa station my mom would rave about for weeks to come. My younger sister, Tara, 29, newly married and freshly pregnant, arrived with her husband and a laundry list of dietary restrictions that somehow applied only to my cooking. Still, I kept my cool. I handed out gifts with a genuine smile, even when hers to me was clearly a re-wrapped candle I'd given her last year. I was exhausted but satisfied by the time the last guest left, plates cleared, lights dimmed, and the fireplace slowly dying down. It wasn't until the next morning, when I opened my bedroom closet to put away the spare linens, that I noticed the safe had been moved. Not opened, just slightly shifted, like someone had tried to be discreet but didn't quite know the original position. My stomach tightened. I walked over, unlocked it, and felt the breath leave my body like a punch to the ribs. The emergency cash I had been saving, $18,000, was gone. Not all at once, either. Someone had taken the time to leave behind a couple hundred, just enough to make me doubt myself at first glance. But I knew the count by heart. I didn't even need to recount it. It was missing. Gone. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long while, gripping the edge of the mattress like I might fly off the planet. I kept thinking it had to be a mistake. Maybe I had moved it and forgotten. Maybe I'd loaned it to someone and didn't write it down. But no, I don't loan money from that stash. That was the money I never touch unless something terrible happens. Medical emergency, job loss, car totaled. It was the only kind of safety net I ever trusted. Still numb, I waited until everyone was awake. My parents were still in the guest room, having stayed over for the first time since I moved into this house. I made coffee like it was a normal day, heart pounding, while my dad scrolled through his phone and my mom casually asked if I had any leftovers they could bring home. Then I asked them if anyone had been in my room. Just casually, a tossed-out question like it didn't mean anything. My dad didn't even blink. "We opened the safe," he said. Just like that. "We gave the cash to your sister. You weren't going to use it anytime soon, and Tara and Jake need it more than you do. Starting a family's expensive." My mom nodded, as if this made perfect sense. My hand tightened around the mug, and I couldn't tell if I wanted to throw it or crush it. But I didn't do either. I just asked, "You what?" My voice cracked a little, but I didn't raise it. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was stunned. It was like hearing someone calmly admit to arson while roasting marshmallows on the ashes. Dad shrugged. "We didn't think you'd mind. You're always so put together. Your sister needs help. We're all family, Nolan." Tara wasn't even in the room. She'd left early that morning. Left. As in, she'd walked out of my house after taking 18 grand out of a safe that wasn't hers, with help from my own father. And they just expected me to accept it. I sat down slowly. "That money wasn't just lying around," I said quietly. "It was my emergency fund." Mom reached over like she was comforting me. "And this is an emergency, sweetie. Tara's baby." I didn't let her finish. I stood up, told them I needed to clear my head, and stepped outside onto the porch. I could hear my dad muttering something about me being overdramatic. That's when the anger finally bloomed. Not the hot kind, but the cold, patient kind. The kind that makes you move slowly and see everything too clearly. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone out. I didn't even send a passive-aggressive message to the family group chat. What I did was simpler. I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and pulled up my home security feed. Every room in the house had a camera, not for spying, but because I travel for work sometimes and like knowing the place is secure. I rewound to the time I guessed they might have gone into my room. Sure enough, there they were. My dad using the spare key I kept hidden in the closet drawer, leading Tara in like it was no big deal. She had a purse with her, oversized, empty looking. My heart rate picked up as I watched her crouch by the safe, her hands trembling slightly before she stuffed envelope after envelope inside her bag. She didn't even hesitate. And worse, my dad stood there like a security guard, arms crossed, nodding along. I watched it twice, then 3 times. Then I made 3 copies. One digital, 2 USB. One went into my fireproof lockbox, the other into my desk at work. The third, well, I'd have a use for that very soon. The next morning, I got up early and made some quiet calls. I reached out to a friend of mine in corporate compliance, another friend in HR at the company where Tara works. We'd gone to college together, and she owed me a favor from years ago. I didn't ask them to break any laws or share confidential info. I just asked for a general understanding of the company's stance on employee conduct and theft, even theft outside work, if it could indicate a breach of ethics or trust. What I learned made me think, then plan, then act. By noon, my phone buzzed with a call from Tara. I hadn't heard her voice since she'd left my house with a purse full of stolen money. She didn't even say hello. "Why would you do this?" she shrieked. I didn't answer immediately. I looked out the window and watched a squirrel hop across my deck railing. "Hello," she snapped. "Answer me." I leaned back in my chair. "You might want to talk to HR before 5 p.m. Dead silence. Then a gasp. A choked breath. "You didn't." I didn't hang up. I just let the silence drag long enough to say everything I needed to. Because this was just the beginning, and she had no idea how far I was willing to go. There was something incredibly quiet about her silence on the other end of the call. For once in our lives, Tara didn't have a comeback. No whining, no excuses, no twisting of the story. Just the sound of her realizing that this time, I wasn't going to be her doormat. I didn't need to say another word. I hung up, dropped my phone gently on the desk, and exhaled for the first time in what felt like days. I wasn't finished, of course. Not by a long shot. The call was just the first domino. I knew how my sister operated. Impulsive, entitled, and dangerously confident that she could always cry her way out of a mess. I gave her until 4:57 p.m. to do the smart thing and walk into HR with a trembling apology and some kind of excuse. Maybe even try to spin it into a mental health leave. But I also knew Tara had never been that strategic. Her specialty was damage control through manipulation, not accountability. And sure enough, at 3:46 p.m., my friend in HR texted me a screenshot of a message Tara had just sent her. "Hey, I heard from someone that there's a weird rumor about me. Can we talk?" That's when I knew she was panicking. By 5 o'clock, it was in motion. I didn't need to interfere again. The system would handle it. Her company had strict ethical guidelines, especially for employees in financial roles, which Tara was. She wasn't just an assistant. She managed internal accounts and petty cash. Not massive sums, but enough that her judgment had to be above reproach. And now, there was high-definition footage of her entering someone else's private property, opening a personal safe, and taking $18,000. Whether or not it led to formal charges didn't even matter at this point. The trust was broken. And once that trust is gone, in companies like hers, your career doesn't just stall, it collapses. But that was just the beginning of the fallout. My parents were still clueless. They had no idea what had just been set in motion. In fact, later that night, they sent a cheerful group text thanking me for another beautiful Christmas. I stared at the screen for a while. They still didn't get it. In their eyes, they hadn't stolen anything. They were just redistributing resources, like some twisted version of Robin Hood where Robin is a middle-aged dad with a savior complex, and the rich is his own son who worked overtime for 5 years to build an emergency fund. I didn't reply. Instead, I scheduled a meeting with my estate lawyer. I wasn't rich by any means, but I had enough to protect. I'd worked hard for what I had, and this wasn't the first time my family blurred the line between support and entitlement. I had let them in too far, too easily, and now they thought my money was community property. That had to stop. So I changed the locks. I moved my emergency funds to a high-security bank account. I updated all my passwords. And most importantly, I amended my will and trust, legally barring my parents and sister from any future claim to my estate, assets, or life insurance. Everything, should something happen to me, would go to charity and a close friend who had always treated me with real respect. 3 days later, the real storm hit. I was on my lunch break when my phone exploded with messages. My mom, my dad, even distant relatives who hadn't texted me in months. Every single one asking, What happened to Tara? Or is it true she got fired? Or why didn't you come to us first? That last one made me laugh out loud in my car. Come to them first? Like they hadn't gone behind my back, opened my safe, handed over 18 grand, and expected me to just smile through it? I let the messages pile up. I didn't answer. Not yet. I knew the second I replied, they'd spin it. So I waited. Sure enough, that evening, Tara herself finally showed up, pounding on my door with mascara running down her face, and Jake, her husband, waiting awkwardly at the foot of my driveway like he wasn't sure if he should come up too. Nolan, she shouted through the door. I need to talk to you. I didn't open the door right away. I stood on the other side, breathing slowly, forcing myself to feel the weight of everything. Not just the betrayal, but the years of being overlooked, used, and blamed. The holidays where I got everyone gifts but was told I didn't get the spirit. The times I lent money and never saw a dollar back. The way Tara always found a way to be the victim, no matter what she'd done. When I finally opened the door, I didn't say anything. I just stood there. Her eyes were wild. They fired me, she said, voice shaking. They said they had proof, like actual video footage of me stealing from you. I tilted my head. Interesting. Nolan, she said, stepping forward. You know I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't even take it for me. It was for the baby. For our future. Dad said it was okay. I thought you knew. I thought you would understand. You didn't even ask, I said, my voice low and calm. You didn't leave a note. You didn't tell me later. You just took it and left. Like a thief. Her face crumpled. You're my brother. Exactly. She started crying. Real or fake, I couldn't tell. Probably both. Do you know what people at work are saying? Do you know how this is going to ruin everything? I'm pregnant, Nolan. I have nothing now. I didn't move. You still have mom and dad. She laughed bitterly. They're furious. They said I should have kept quiet. That I embarrassed them. That you made them look like criminals. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't they steal from me too? That shut her up. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. You ruined my life. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because that lie didn't even deserve a reply. She stood there for a few more seconds, waiting for me to break, to fold, to say something comforting. But when I didn't, she finally turned around and walked down the steps, past her silent husband, and into the cold evening air. I watched until they got in the car and drove off. And that's when I finally closed the door and locked it behind me. It took about 24 hours before the next wave hit. My parents, unsurprisingly, couldn't let things lie. I knew them too well. They weren't just upset that Tara had lost her job, they were embarrassed. And when my parents get embarrassed, they don't apologize. They strategize. The first clue was the unexpected text from my mom the next morning. Just 5 words. Can we come by today? No emojis. No context. Just the kind of message that pretends to be neutral while carrying 1,000 pounds of loaded emotion. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, my dad tried calling. I let it go to voicemail. Then the group chat pinged. Let's talk as a family. We've always worked things out before. As if I'd misplaced my keys, not been robbed in my own home by the people who raised me. By noon, they were on my doorstep. I didn't have to open the door. I saw them through the security cam. Dad standing with his arms crossed like a disappointed CEO. Mom holding a Tupperware of something warm, like a bribe. I waited a solid minute before opening the door. Not to be dramatic, just to make it clear they were stepping into my house, not the other way around. Nolan, Mom said with a strained smile. We just want to talk. I let them in, but I didn't offer coffee. Didn't invite them to sit. I stood by the wall while they hovered awkwardly in the foyer. Dad cleared his throat. Your sister's a wreck. She's sick over this. She should be, I said plainly. My mom pressed the Tupperware into my hands like that would soften me. We didn't mean for things to spiral. We thought, if we could just help Tara through a rough patch. She's having a baby, Nolan. I nodded slowly, set the Tupperware on a table without looking at it. And that justified stealing? Dad shifted his weight. It wasn't stealing. Not like that. Your family. You're her family. We thought you'd understand. I walked to the middle of the room, letting the silence stretch. What you thought, I said finally, was that I wouldn't notice. Or if I did, I'd just roll over. That I'd take the hit like I always do. That's what you really counted on. Neither of them answered. I continued. When you say things like, we're family, it sounds like unity. But it's not. It's code for you're responsible for everyone else, and we're not responsible for you. It's not love. It's leverage. Mom's face crumpled a little, but Dad, he doubled down, as always. You think we wanted to be put in this situation? You think this was easy for us? I think you broke into my safe, I replied coolly, and enabled your daughter to walk out with more cash than most people make in 4 months. That shut him up. Then Mom, soft as ever, tried her usual script. We raised you to be strong, to protect your siblings. And what about me? I asked, my voice steady but sharp. Who protects me? The silence that followed was probably the most honest moment we'd had in years. After a long pause, my dad finally said, "This isn't how we handle things in this family." I smiled, but there was no humor in it. Maybe that's the problem. He opened his mouth, closed it again, and then shook his head. Look, let's be realistic. You've made your point. She lost her job. She's miserable. Can we please just put this behind us? There it was. Let's pretend this never happened. That was always their solution. Brush it under the rug, pretend everything was fine, and act shocked when it rots from underneath. No, I said simply. My mom blinked. What do you mean? I mean there's no going back, I said. This doesn't just get erased because she's upset. Because you're upset. Actions have consequences. And it's time our family learned that. Dad took a step forward, lowering his voice. What exactly are you trying to do here, Nolan? Ruin your sister's life? Tear this family apart? I stared him down. You already did that when you chose her over me, and didn't even have the decency to tell me. There was a long silence. My mom looked like she might cry. My dad's face was hard as stone. You're being petty, he muttered. You could have handled this quietly. I did, I said. You're just upset that I didn't handle it your way. The way that protects everyone but me. They didn't say anything after that. Just stood there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. I opened the door. You should go, I said. I have things to do. My dad muttered something under his breath as he walked past me. I didn't catch it, and I didn't care. My mom lingered in the doorway. You were always the good one, she said softly. Don't let this harden you. I met her eyes. Maybe being the good one was the problem. Then I closed the door. I stood there for a long moment, not moving. Not angry. Just done. Something inside me had shifted. I wasn't waiting for apologies anymore. I wasn't explaining myself to people who never listened. I wasn't the good one they could quietly bleed dry and then call ungrateful when I finally said no. This was my line, and I had finally drawn it in ink. I thought closing that door would be the end of it, that I'd drawn a hard enough boundary, made my point, and the rest of the family would back off once they realized I wasn't bluffing. But families like mine, the kind where guilt is passed down like heirlooms, never make anything simple. And the problem with doing the right thing in a dysfunctional system is that the moment you step out of line, you become the villain. Not the person who was wronged. Not the one who got stolen from. Just the one who disrupted the performance. It started small. A message from my Aunt Vivian, who never once called to wish me a happy birthday, but now apparently had time to send a paragraph at 1:37 a.m. about how sad it is to see a family torn apart. Then came Uncle Greg with his classic tactic, the 5-paragraph lecture disguised as concern. I understand you're upset, he wrote, but family means sacrifice. You're the stable one. That's a gift. Don't punish others for not having what you do. I didn't reply to either of them. I didn't delete the messages, either. I kept them, like exhibits in a case I never wanted to build. The final straw came when my cousin Elise, who I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade, tagged me in a long-winded Facebook post about forgiveness and how babies are blessings and how we all need to be bigger than our pain. That one had 34 likes and 6 comments within 2 hours. I read it twice before realizing she was never talking about forgiveness. She was talking about silence, about compliance, about going back to the way things were. That afternoon, I sat down and wrote a message. Not to Elise, not to my aunts or uncles, or even to Tara. I wrote it to the entire family group chat, the one where we usually shared photos of holiday pies and reminders about Grandma's birthday dinner. I kept it short. Since there seems to be some confusion, let me clarify. On Christmas, Dad and Tara entered my private room, opened my locked safe, and stole $18,000. It wasn't borrowed. It wasn't discussed. It was stolen. When I confronted them, they justified it. When Tara lost her job due to evidence I had, they blamed me instead of the person who committed the theft. If your response to this is to tell me I should have been quieter, kinder, or more forgiving. You are not someone I want in my life. I'm done protecting people who harm me. I'm done with family being used as a shield for abuse. Do not contact me again unless it's to apologize. This includes passive-aggressive posts, third-party guilt trips, or attempts to mediate. I have nothing left to discuss. I hit send. Then I silenced the chat. What followed was quiet. For 2 days. No calls. No texts. No drive-by guilt drops. The silence was so foreign it almost made me anxious. But then it hit me. That feeling in my chest wasn't anxiety. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop waiting for people to be who they're not. But peace doesn't pay the bills. And despite the satisfaction of cutting them off, I was still out 18 grand. So I contacted my lawyer again. We reviewed the footage, the messages, and everything in between. I didn't want to press criminal charges, not yet. But I did want it on the record. So we filed a formal police report. The detective who took my statement was calm, professional, and surprisingly sympathetic. They think this kind of thing doesn't count, he said as he watched the video of Tara stuffing the envelopes into her purse. But it's theft. Plain and simple. Doesn't matter if it's your sister or a stranger. It felt strange, surreal, hearing someone name it so plainly. Theft. A word my family had tiptoed around like it might bite them. But there it was. In ink. On file. Meanwhile, Tara was spiraling. Apparently, after she was let go from her job, Jake had started to see her in a different light. I heard through the grapevine, because of course the gossip still flowed freely, that he'd moved out temporarily. Said he needed space to process. Which was code for, I didn't sign up for this kind of drama. My parents were footing her bills now, but even their patience had limits. Especially when they realized that not only was I serious, but I had receipts. Real ones. Digital ones. Legal ones. A week later, I got a certified letter at my office. From my parents' lawyer. Inside was a request, not a lawsuit, not a demand. Just a proposal. They wanted to open a dialogue about the money. They were willing, the letter said, to reimburse part of it. Not the full amount, of course. Just $10,000. Enough to show good faith and move forward. The letter dripped with carefully chosen language. You could practically see the panic between the lines. I didn't respond immediately. I went home, poured a drink, sat by the window, and thought about all the Christmases I'd spent making sure everyone else was comfortable. About all the times I'd been called ungrateful for not letting myself be drained dry. About the look on Tara's face when she said you ruined my life. As if I was the villain for protecting what was mine. And then I wrote a letter of my own. Sent it through my attorney the next day. It said simply, "Thank you for your offer. Unfortunately, I am not interested in settling." The full amount was taken without my knowledge or consent, and anything less than full restitution is unacceptable. If this is not received within 30 days, I will pursue civil charges. I suggest you advise your daughter to return the funds in full. And this time, ask permission. 2 weeks passed. I received no reply. Then, without warning, a check arrived. $18,000. Signed not by Tara, but by my father. No note. No apology. Just the check. I deposited it the same day. Then I sent one final message to the family group chat. Short, blunt, final. The matter is settled. I don't want to hear from any of you again. And I meant it. That was 3 months ago. Tara hasn't called. My parents haven't visited. Christmas decorations are still boxed in the garage, and I don't plan on unboxing them next year. Or the year after. My house feels different now. Quieter. Safer. There's no more fear when I walk into a room I used to lock. No more pressure to entertain people who only see me as a bank account with a beating heart. I've started spending more time with people who actually respect me. Coworkers. Neighbors. A friend from the gym who invited me over for dinner just last weekend. No guilt, no expectations, just food and conversation. It was the most relaxed I've felt in years. And as for my family, they're still out there. Still spinning the story. I'm sure in their version, I'm cold, heartless, ungrateful. But I don't care anymore. I don't need to defend the truth to people who prefer the lie. Because the truth is this. I didn't ruin anything. They did. I just finally stopped cleaning up after them.